Hello and welcome everybody for another GRL podcast. This week we were at Singapore for Shock the Singapore Grand Prix. We're here for the second time in GRL history after we had our inaugural race here in season 3 in Division 1. I remember H winning his only GRL win, and yeah, we returned to Asia once more after Japan and China, for example, and now in Singapore. One of the most favorite street tracks on the calendar. And yeah, I'm here with McMessy tonight to go through all the divisions, go through all the race results, and see how predictions from last week ended up. I'm sure they've just gone into the bin, but we'll have a look. Yeah, and I think we just have a look at Division 1. And in Division 1, it was Beeford who picked up his first pole position of the season, and actually his first pole position in his whole GRL career. And he also won the race in a last lap battle with his championship rival Snipes, who finishes second. Michael Dale then as reserve in third place, ahead of Torpen in fourth, Blade in P5, once again racing despite it being 5:30 his local time, myself in P6, Jacob in P7, Gibson in P8 with the fastest lap of the race and the two-stop strategy, Bourbon in ninth for McLaren as well, Evo in 10th and Leonardo in 11th, with Louis Walsh-Jack, Sam Ghosts and Neil Clark retiring from the race. In the driver standings, Beeford winning from Snipes. This has closed up the championship battle even more, as Snipes leads with 272 points, while Beeford is in second on 261, so only 11 points splitting the top two now. Blade then moves up to third on 197 points, and whilst Jack remains on 186 due to another costly DNF to his name. Ham remains in P5 on 164 points, and Radius also stays on 97, with Maxuz on 84, same as Ghost Jr., and Torpen and myself on 82, while Gibson is only on 67 points, so he'll try his best to get into these top 10 positions as soon as possible. In the team standings, Alpine still on top with 458 points, and I've got Mercedes on 354, so just over 100 points the gap here, and Alpine will try and do the best to wrap up this championship as soon as possible. McLaren in third on 274 points, with Alfa Romeo on 245, with Aston Martin on 219 and Red Bull on 208, with Ferrari in P7 on 196. Haas on 149, just 1 point ahead of Williams, and AlphaTauri in P10 on 91 points. Well, Drew, I mean, we talked about the championship battle last week, and it was certainly back for the Singapore race, which is known as a driver's track, really, like most of the street circuits. But to have the top two in the championship to go side by side in the last lap to decide who wins the Grand Prix, and then the guy winning in second in the championship is basically what everyone can only hope for as a neutral spectator now, because it just closes up the championship even more.
Yeah, well, for the spectators, it's obviously wonderful to see. The gap's now closed to 11 points from, what was it before, 17? So,
Yeah.
and especially with it being on the last lap, that makes it even more interesting. I'm sure Snipes is probably annoyed, but for us, let's bring it on. Let's have more of the same for the rest of the season. Let's hopefully, if it goes to last race of the season and it finishes on the last lap, that will be just heaven. Hopefully, Beeford can make up for mistakes of 2021 Abu Dhabi that Lewis did, and he can win it on the final lap of the final race.
Well, he will also be the first Division 1 driver to win the title twice. and in general, the first driver to win 2 championships, as nobody's ever done it. So I'm sure that's a target he's going to be having an eye on very, very closely. Also, Michael Dale in third with a good race as reserve. But
Yeah, no, very good.
yeah,
All of them seem to all be capable of winning though. That like top five drivers that finished in that race.
yeah, I mean the grid positions are slightly wrong here. It's obviously not like everyone stayed in the same position, but it also was a wet qualifying, going from I think a couple of drivers on the wet at the start to the inters, and the track improved, but the range just never really stopped, and we saw different people clinching provisional pole from not only Beeford but also Snipes, Blade. I think myself for a second, Gibson, Evo. So yeah, also Welsh Jack, who then had a horrific race. I mean, looking at Welsh Jack's championship we talked about last week, I mean, he obviously still has a shot at it, but with only 5 rounds to go, almost having a 100 points deficit, I mean, in theory, he needs to win all the remaining races now.
Yeah, it's not looking as plausible as it once did. But that's just going to happen. We're just going to see probably more and more people who we think have a slight outside chance just disappear, or make themselves even more known just because as you do, the races get smaller, meaning the points that you can pick up become smaller as well. So yeah, it's just us getting down to the nitty and gritty. But looking at it now, it really does look like it will just be them two at the top five for it at the end of the season. But because 70 points even for Blade pickup would be a terrific achievement from here on out. So yeah,
Yeah, I
but at
think.
least they're putting on a show for the 11 points between them two. At least that's going to be one to
Yeah,
keep an eye on for sure.
I mean, maybe the gap gets closer if those two get closer. So there's a bit of more of how Blade would say rubbing is racing. So that would certainly open up chances for the others a bit more. So maybe a bit of an outside chance still, but as said, it's going to be very, very difficult indeed for them to claw back that gap. But it happened in season 3. We played with I think 4 rounds, was around 70 points off as well, and he could gain the gap back up by just winning 3 out of the last 4 races, including also sprint. So yeah, we got another sprint this season, which is in Miami. So you never know. Maybe Lost Track Play can throw a spanner in the works. I mean, we talked about close midfielding constructors championships last week. I mean, Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin, McLaren, they're all pretty close. But
Yeah,
not only in the team standings, really, also in the drivers, it looks that there is maybe a real fight on for P6 in the championship, as Raiders is obviously not racing anymore. I mean, it's now anyone's game, isn't it? Because Max is racing very often recently, just can't get the race results out of it. Ghost as well, good qualifyings, but struggling in race. Well, Torp and myself, Gibson are picking up some good race results and a couple of points, and then also Sora, who is not excluded from this, isn't it? This could be a massive battle for P6 in the championship and basically best of the rest.
yeah. No, that's still that championship for P6. That finish is still definitely completely open. And the for the McLaren team, they got double points this weekend again. Um, so what was it? They followed. Was it Division Two where they got a P1 and P2 last week?
Yes.
Was So that's another good showing for them for the overall constructors and this individual team standings. Um, and like you say, even Sora's got a chance of getting into that P6, but sadly didn't get any points this round.
Yeah, I mean, bit difficult with a race ban.
Yeah, well, if he keeps with his penalties, he's going to get more and more race bans and stuff. So it is what it is.
I mean, at this rate, maybe Michael Dale, with a good end to the season, could join the battle as well, as he's in 15th with 41 points. But yeah, I said he needs a really good couple of races because even if goes Topper and myself, Gibson only pick up a few points per week. I mean, at least the people in the 80s already have basically double the points of the guys behind, so they'll certainly need better performances overall. While for
Yeah,
people like Torpen and Ghost and myself, it probably is enough to be around P8, pick up around 5 points or even more per race to just manage the gap. But yeah, I would say it's just rewards the people who've been here all season and just now still had to pick up the odd point, and yeah, which could prove vital in the midfield of drivers and constructors championship. But yeah, after Division One, we now have a look at Division 2, where it was Gente Barnes who crossed the line in first. He also had no in-game penalties, but the stewards awarded him with a 5-second time penalty after pushing Avenicus off at turn 1. So it was Contes who inherited the win, so the Italian driver in the Haas as reserve picks up P1 after starting P13, while Partig in second qualified 19th after horrific qualifying for all the AMS drivers, the three AMS drivers in the grid qualifying 17th, 19th, and 20th. So yeah, Partig at least holding the flag high for the AMS guys, with Shente Barston set in third place and Clever in fourth, with Amos Cole in fifth, Caesar 2 Wizard in P6, O'Malley in seventh, Lloyd in P8, Dylan Baxter in P9, Chopper in 10th, struggling after his win at Austin, Texas, and Hobbs in 11th with DNFs for Rob Kelly, who I remember he did George Russell. Avenicus, he also DNF'd by losing it on his own. Rage, he also crashed into the barriers, losing his wing. Drastic Blaze, Savage Cabbage, Tops Jugs, BRT Jacob, BRT Jordan, and Drazi, who managed to disqualify himself after picking up the fastest lap of the race. In the driver standings, Gentibars obviously still is on top with 236 points, with Hobbs in second and 205, who repasses Dylan Baxter, who's now on 199. Hessela Jamden on 144, Amos Cullen 135, Partigan 120, and Jobbo on 107, with Rob Kelly on 103, same as Amos Lloyd, and Beatty Jordan on 98. Then we've got also Jim level points with Jordan. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes has a massive lead still, despite Gentebars not succeeding in the end with a P1 finish. Mercedes have 434 points to their name, with McLaren 262, level pegging with AlphaTauri. Behind them, only 4 points, we've got Haas and Red Bull on 258, and Alfa Romeo on 245, with Ferrari on 239. Alpine on 169, and Aston Martin jumping up to 9th on 155, just 6 points ahead of Williams. I mean, last week we said McLaren have made a massive jump and they've also remained in second place, but they didn't have a very good weekend this time out, especially compared to the likes of AlphaTauri, who got a second place, Haas, who got a race win, Red Bull, I believe, picked up a couple of points as well. So did Alfa Romeo and Ferrari. I mean, as said, a race win could change this all up really, as the gap between second and seventh is less than 25 points. And that's only what one driver can score. I mean, even though, as said, Mercedes is clear and they're probably going to wrap up the championship within the next 1 or 2 weeks, I mean, it's looking really, really interesting behind that, doesn't it? For what probably is a best of the rest, if you can call it, in the Constructors' Championship.
yeah, it's definitely another thing to aim for, isn't it, for the drivers to see how well they can lead up and finish in the team standings. And like you say, one win can change it all, especially and including in the standings from 7th to 2nd. But it also goes to show that how many people finished for McLaren this weekend in the points? One,
Yeah,
one person,
yeah, and tenth.
and
No, sorry.
kept they've still kept that position that they've then gained from 7th, just with that one person finishing. So that win and second place that they've got was just so massive to have gotten that they just get it gains one poor race result, which other teams didn't. Obviously, they don't get that for. So hopefully they can. You would hope for the McLaren team that they can get that behind them and hopefully pull out some other good results to keep them up in second. But if not, everyone else is right there. Like you say, it just takes one of the drivers to pull out a win somewhere, or another driver to get a 1-2 or even a 3-4. Just the points together, two people finishing adds up, and you all of a sudden you're looking at a different spot. You were looking at fifth, now you're looking at second. It's just how close it is, especially in that constructor standards in Division Two.
Yeah, it's as I said, it's amazing to watch, and it's good, I think, to be in the top of that pile. But you certainly will have to fight the ride to the end. And as
Yeah,
I said, something within the order of constructors, whether it is of season 4 or all added together from our GRL seasons, is certainly going to affect the draft system of next season. So especially the team owners who are pretty certain they'll keep the seat, they'll probably want to kind of do well, so they can maybe get an advantage or an earlier pick next season. That's probably when you're not fighting for the top, because Mercedes is doing really well. What they are aiming for.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, interesting though. I mean, Chente Bars was pretty sovereign for the most part of the season, especially now since he's come back. At first, it looked like Dylan and Hobbs maybe can do well, but they've really struggled once again this week. But also, Chente Bars is now making slight mistakes, like for example, losing the car into turn one, losing the rear, and then pushing Avenicus off, which is costing him another couple of points. I mean, he's still fine. He's still got a 31-point lead. But yeah, those mistakes which you've now awarded him with a quali ban at Qatar, I mean, he just needs to maybe keep it a bit more calm, doesn't he, to just make sure he does not lose the momentum.
He does need to keep it more calm, but he's also probably the luckiest person in the world at the same time that the two people around him just don't seem to be picking up points.
Yeah.
Like he's just dropped from where was it? He finished the race first, drops to third. If either Hops or Dylan are around there at first or second, they're just gaining so many more points on him from that mistake. But with Hops finishing 11th and Dylan finishing 9th, it almost makes it meaningless.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as much as he's creeping in a little bit of, pressure maybe coming onto him and it's creeping into his performance, slight mistakes here and there, he's just not getting punished.
Yeah, I mean, I think we
So
all would agree that a freeway, an actual freeway championship fight where people would actually be close to each other on track, that would certainly be better to watch, because it would pile up the pressure even more to Gente. Because I think Hobbs and Dylan haven't won a championship, and they've always been hunting him for the whole season, but never could really touch him. They've not much to lose, have they? They can just go all in.
yeah, they've just got it all to throw in, all to go in. They've got no issues at all to think about.
I mean,
But
it's going to be an interesting last 2 rounds, as said, and behind them something's brewing as well, as Cole and Partick look to be fighting for that net P4 spot, while the drives behind are also trying to get near them. But yeah, I mean, I think one guy we have to talk about still is not only Partick, who finished second after starting 19th, but Kont, I mean, he's come in at Kota, so last week pretty much. His second race at Singapore, qualified 13th, which is not great, but could be worse, I said. And now wins the race after keeping it clean. Yeah, I mean, someone certainly found the foot quite quickly, no?
No, that's very very impressive. And Singapore, like you say, it's a driver's track. It's one of them where you don't really have qualifying as high as possible is good, but there's mistakes to be made on the track, which means that you can start further back and you can get through. And he's just taken perfect advantage of that, kept it clean. Genta gets the penalty, and he fully just takes advantage of that and gets the win. And you can't expect for anything better than that. That's just perfect driving, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you look at the people who have actually lost the race in the walls of this track. I mean, Avenicus got pole, then spun, fought himself back up, but then spun again, which ended his race. Rob Kelly, I think, has won one or two races, but it's done a George Russell with 2 laps to go. Um, he was fighting for the win, which
Yeah.
has caused him a retirement. And Rage, who's won Division One race here last season, has also lost his wing twice, and this has also caused him to DNF. With other drivers like Jordan and Drazzy, who've also won races. I mean, just shows that the caliber of drivers he's beaten has certainly proved his point of being one of the top drivers for maybe for the last few races.
No, definitely for sure. Proven that he is one of the best drivers. Sure.
Yeah, I think we can wrap it up here. I think we'll have a close look at Conto the last 2 races because maybe someone wants to prepare for season 5 already because he's got absolutely nothing to lose. People that have got something to lose are in Division 3 because there's a Rattle Championship fight going on. But it was Robin who won on his Division 3 debut, with Corey in second and Lorne in third, with Boosted up in fourth, finally beating Micello, finishing in P5, Tia Hayes in P6 and Rexy in P7, Maka in 8th, F50 Max in ninth, and Salagi in 10th, with Christmas, Ashim Basha, and Squixie outside the top 10. In the Drivers' Championship, Micello on top still with 227 points, 12 points ahead of Boosted on 215. Then in third, we've got Maka on 165.5 and Ashim Bash on 160.5, 75 points splitting the Mercedes and the Red Bull. They've got Lorne 133.5, who's had a good result with that podium again, and some Pikachu on 119.5. Then we've got Hayes on 95, Corey on 82.5, Yasin on 77, and rounding off the top 10, once again, RT Apex on 74, with people like Cami, Owl, AJ Nolan, and so on behind them. In the Teams Championship, we've got AlphaTauri remaining in P1 on 410 points, and Red Bull in second on 380.5, with Mercedes on 318, so just remaining there or thereabout, with Alpine on 210, Ferrari on 192, McLaren 153.5, Williams and Alfa Romeo on 148, just 2.5 points ahead of Aston Martin on 145.5, and Haas last by half a point on 145. I mean, the last few weeks we've talked about Haas being last, and it's a bit of a surprise because they've got a good lineup. Corey has done really well the last few weeks while Dom wasn't here. Corey now once again second, so I think if you look into the Division 3 results in the last 2 weeks, we've got Corey in second, first, and yeah, before it didn't race. So, yeah, I mean, Haas is really now piling up the pressure on the teams ahead, aren't they? Including, obviously, as said, your team. So,
Yes.
in looking at the bottom 5, we are in for a very interesting battle here. It's down the 8.5 points splitting those 5 teams.
Yeah, it's getting very very close with the bottom five teams, and that has team picking up points basically from a Corey, carry job is, well, it's scary, to be honest with you. From a from a team owner perspective because I don't have a driver doing the same in the same division, sadly. So yeah, it's they've closed it down. They've got 3 points to us. You would expect with the current form of Corey that he would probably pull them out of that and go ahead of us by the next race. So yeah, not really the greatest thing for as a team owner to feel like, and I do trust my drivers and I've backed them to get good results in this division. But the guy is on one hell of a form and good streak of racing, and we all want to see it, regardless of me not being his team owner. It's lovely to see drivers doing well and performing as best as they can. So yeah, it'll be fun, regardless if they overtake us or not. Seeing someone like you say with that streak of results is just it's great for the league and it's great for the racing.
Yeah, I mean, even when it doesn't look like Alpine and Ferrari aren't involved in this and they're in a pretty safe spot. I mean, if as said, if a team like us or someone else really is on a good form, they are not safe, are they? Because in like 5 races, 40, 50 points can be easily clawed back, especially if one of the teams is not on a great run of form.
No, it's no, especially that it's not a big chunk of change as you would some people might describe it. 40 points over space of 5 races, one win, and Corey's got the form that you would think he would get one win out of that five. Then it all of a sudden looks different, totally different for a team perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, as said previously, I think these divisions, especially because it's Division 3, it's right in the middle between lower skilled drivers and the top tier drivers. It's just one of the divisions where people push up and down, which also make the overall constructors very interesting because it is very close in the midfield, especially between those kind of teams like Alpine, Ferrari, McLaren, Haas. So that could at the end make the difference. So that's going to be a very interesting in how this ends because the top three are safe. I mean, there's no chance for the others to gain their back at all. So I think AlphaTauri, Red Bull,
No.
Mercedes will try and focus on the big crown of the constructors. While AlphaTauri have had a gap of over 100 points at once, but now it's only 30.5. So I think they've got enough problems on their hands.
I think the AlphaTauri team have some issues to sort out on that front. To be honest,
Yeah, I mean, if you look, they've got 410 points now, and let's say, yeah, 6 weeks back, they've had 345, so they've scored less than 10 points per week on average now. So, yeah, it doesn't look like them doing much better than your guys recently, but they just need
no,
enough of a boost with Avenicus really winning races for them. So,
yes,
they can basically chill because even if you don't win, which you obviously won't, but if you finish second, it's not a bad result at all, especially with Red Bull having such a great lineup as well. But yeah, talking about championships, I mean, it's finally happened. The boost that has beaten Misello and has therefore closed the gap in the championship by a little bit. But once again, it's just they are not really fighting for wins or barely podiums at this rate. They're just around fourth to seventh recently, which is interesting because, as said, if someone behind them really is on a good run of form, which it is too big of a gap for Corey to claw that back. But if there's someone who's a bit closer and gets to that kind of pace, they would expose themselves. But for now, it looks they're safe, don't they?
yeah, no, definitely for sure. They are lucky that someone with the form like Corey is that far back, and it's not for example, Basher with that form or Maka with that form to be making them kind of comebacks midway through the season. So yeah, it's it's a bit of a shame. You would like to see that the top tier of the championship fight is going to wins, but points are points nonetheless. And if you're fighting between fifth and sixth, I guess it makes it a little bit more easy for the championship leader because you're more likely that the other person's going to have a mistake at one point, and the points that you're picking up aren't as big.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think it's quite amazing just looking at the statistics that not Marcelo, but also no Boosted have gotten a pole position yet. While you would think, I mean, Marcelo has won two, Boosted has won one. If they are apparently struggling a bit in the race to make the difference, they would probably have a good qualifyings on them. But yeah, it looks like they're they're just doing it over the consistency, which is what the championship stands for. But yeah, as said, I think Boosted probably would be quite happy if he could say, I've won another race because it would gain him at least 5 points. And yeah, while he is only 12 points behind, I mean, if you're like 5 to 7 points behind, that certainly gives you a bit more confidence, I think, because yeah, going into the last race, for example, to have points to claw back of over 10 points, it's going to be a bit difficult, wouldn't it?
yeah, it will be difficult, but I also think that possibly a lack of wins came from the fact that Swansea did pick up a lot of wins. Obviously,
Yeah.
Avenica's moved up, didn't he? So they were struggling to get wins against him when he was as unreal as he was at the first half of the season. So yeah, that also will affect the amount of wins that they got throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, we
It
can have a
took
look at the
them,
results really. If you look at Micello, who's been in this division since the start, like boosted, he's won at Australia, then he's DNF, then he had a fifth place at Britain and third, two sevenths, P6, a win at China, Patrak, 12 at Zandvoort, and then since then pretty consistent third, fifth, fourth, ninth, second, sixth, second again at Kota, and fifth at Singapore. While Boosted has never finished outside of the top 10. So it looks like Boosted's a bit more like consistent, but with
yeah,
only one win and three other podiums. I mean, he's got 4 podiums. Micello's got 6. While he's had ninth, seventh, sixth, second, 8 places, first, fourth, second. So good run between Vegas and China. 10th, P6, P6, P5, P7, and recently 2/3, 1/4, and 1/5. So they're getting nearer towards the top again. But it looks like if they would have struggled a bit more for consistency, they would really have a bit of a problem because even Basher, even though he's only done 10 races, he's got more podiums than Boosted.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think they can say they're a bit lucky that they've been here since the
That
get-go because otherwise it would probably be a lot closer.
Yeah, and that would have been interesting for the team dynamic of Red Bull. Seems fragile as it is. Never mind with them two being championship
It
rivals.
is, yeah. I've completely forgotten about that. Yeah, I mean, there was something going on with Singapore between them two because they were yeah ticketing each other actually. So
Yes.
I mean, we know he's going to be very happy about that situation, and that person is probably going to sit in an AlphaTauri or in the Racing Bulls quite shortly, as it says in real life now. Um, but yeah, that's Division 3. I think we're looking forward on what's going to happen next, and we never know. Maybe Corey can fight himself at least into the best of the rest battle within the next few weeks. In Division 4, though, where Ravenous is obviously leading the championship by a country mile, well, he's won at Singapore. I mean, yeah, after winning a Kota with the fastest lap, he couldn't get the fastest lap this time, but he picked up the win in Singapore with Casper in second, Sonic in third, and White Josh in fourth. With Roman Banjo in P5, Jesper in P6. So both Ferraris in the top six, so as the both Alfa Romeos. With Nebrestrom in seventh, Asteroid in P8, also Alpine being right behind each other. Tweaky Scorpion in ninth, and Taylor Boss in 10th, ahead of Diamond Miner, Ayahuasca, and Koi Age. In the Drivers' Championship, Raven West remains in P1. Not really the biggest of shocks. He's on 294 points, so getting closer towards that 300 points mark. Jesper then in second on 186, with White Josh in third on 160, and Sonic on 153. So the two Alfa Romeos really trying to keep with Jesper now. Koye in P5, in 143 points, with Nebrestrom on 129 and Drawn in 127. Remote Banjo in P8 and 125, so pretty close still to the two guys ahead, with Quell on 122 and Captain Daniel on 109. While in the Constructors' Championship, of course, Mercedes is on top with 420, but Alfa Romeo are also remaining in second ahead of Alpine. So Alfa Romeo sits on 323 points, 9 points ahead of Alpine on 314, with Red Bull on 278 and Ferrari on 260, with AlphaTauri passing Aston Martin with points from 211 to 188. McLaren on 175, with Williams on 154, and like in Division 3, Haas in last with 127 points. Yeah, as every week, I mean, Raven West is making it a bit difficult to like hype this championship up a lot. With another win, I think he's now also got the most wins in here. If we have a look at our statistics and press here on Raven West, he's currently sitting on 5 wins, 9 podiums. I mean, he's really now just trying to move on and pick that championship up and make it confirmed as soon as possible, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's just an unstoppable force, it seems like, in this division. Um, but yeah, for the rest of the division, though, like you say, the Alpine and Alfa Romeo fight that's going on, it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And my
Cool.
lads had a good showing this week, both of them. So that's that's for me, that's positive. So
Yeah, I
we
was
definitely
about to
take
talk
that.
that as well because, yeah, I mean, last week we said why Josh was doing well. I think he moved himself up near the podium or something. If I look at the race results from,
Yeah, he
yeah,
finished
finished second
second.
and now fourth, just behind his teammate. I mean, it looks like you've got some healthy competition going on because I can also see the Alfa Romeo team chat, and there's never anything negative about between them two, and they seem to work really well. I mean, this must be one of your favorite divisions, considering you might not be at the sharp end, like really at the top, but at least the drivers, considering the big gap, are still so motivated to really get some good results in.
Yeah, no, the it is one of the better divisions. And like you say, we were praising White Josh last week, and Sonic obviously comes in and he puts in a good performance for the team as well. So it's nice to have two drivers performing at the same time, right next to each other. And yeah, I agree. Most of the drivers that we've had together have worked out perfectly, and worked together throughout the races. So I would imagine them two would have also have done similar to keep Remote Banjo behind them and Jesper behind them. So yeah, just hopefully it continues and we can get more points on the board. Yeah, it would be nice to be fighting for the P1 of the team standings, but you take a P2, so
Yeah,
you've got to fight for what you can get.
I mean, you've got an advantage, at least if you look at the overall, because you've got two drivers in this division who can probably pick up a race win. But Mercedes clearly has one driver and one driver only,
Yes, but
and
that one driver seems unstoppable
yeah,
right now.
just time to stop him, isn't it? But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, as I said, it looks like you've got two tier one drivers at this stage, and considering the tier system is there to like pair up a faster driver with a bit of a slower driver. It's good to see. I think that it still can happen. That both of them are pretty similar in pace, and it's not like a big pace difference. I mean, same for Ferrari. Remote Banjo once more beats Jesper. And Asteroid also.
Yeah.
I mean, he's qualified fourth. His qualifying's recently from Asteroid must be really good. He got pole coat and fourth now. I mean, looks like he's just got to sort his race pace out a bit, and he maybe can attack a bit higher in the next season, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's like you say, it's nice to see that the two drivers have similar pace in the end. But they both have like contrasting races as well. When Sonic gets points, he seems to have qualified higher and then had a good race as well. Whereas White Josh, his qualifying is not there, but his race pace has been there with his 15th to second last race and his ninth to fourth this race. Similar with like Remote Banjo, when he qualifies quite high up, he seems to stay quite high up as well. I mean, I know obviously he DNF the week before that, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, it's quite nice to see which ones have got more race pace than you would think from just because obviously that's how we generally did the tiering based on the qualifying results. So
That's
some
yeah.
people slip through from the race pace part of the
Yeah, it's
thing because it
usually,
is
especially if they're new people, isn't it? When someone signs up new, you can't really tell what the race is going to be like Asteroid. It's his first season.
yeah
I mean, his
yeah
qualifiers apparently is very good, but yeah, just needs to work a bit on the race. I mean, it is Singapore after all.
yeah.
I myself, I'm not the biggest fan to drive. I mean, it's good if you nail it, but you just nail it once within 1k laps, which is not the most motivating bit. But yeah, overall, I think that he and a couple of others are certainly thereabout. And I mean, they've got over Christmas and the year to work out what they need to improve for going for the attack next season. I mean, Casper's apparently found his foot very nicely, but finishing second again after having a good couple of races. I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe Yasin isn't the best Swedish driver anymore, is he?
Maybe not, but I'm not sure. Yasin, he might have called himself the best Swedish driver, but I'm not sure that was ever a real title for sure. Especially when he breaks his wheel every 2 weeks. But talking about qualifying to race pace, Yasin is the epitome of that. With him qualifying P1 and spinning near enough every single time he does. So yeah, it's all about putting it together and getting the points that way, rather than being a TT merchant essentially. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, Yasin is one of those, isn't he? Who just says, yeah, he has done like 40 TT laps for this, and then you say, why don't you practice? Practice the race, and he says, I've got no time. I mean, that's a interesting way on how to approach race practice. But yeah, I mean, I just think like if you can do 40 TT laps, you might as well do race run. But yeah, that might be why I'm not that good in qualifying and just decide to pick up points instead of quali positions. But yeah, I mean, before we move on to Division 5, I mean, we've talked about AlphaTauri before that. Koi and Ayahuasca are a pretty solid lineup, and once we could see them fighting for second, or someone of them attacking Rayon West in the drivers. I mean, that's gone horribly wrong. I mean, they've passed Aston Martin, but I mean, recently Koi and Ayahuasca are not really putting in the performances to stay anywhere near Alpine and Alpha, are they?
no, not really. And that is a shame for the competitive aspect of the division. But it's if you're not performing, you're just going to get punished, especially in a division where so many people are being quite consistent now. And with the main, almost seemingly like you're coming to each race thinking second is the best you're going to get at the moment. That means your points tally to be able to catch up to people instantly becomes lower from you not being able to grab that first. As you say, it really does seem like it's not there for everyone right now.
Yeah, it's just very interesting, as I said previously, because most of these drivers have been part of KRL, a league that Raven has been an admin in, I believe, and they've been split across different tiers. Neb Restrom and Remo Banjo were in tier one there, while people like Ravenest were in the second tier, and Casper even was in the third. And it looks like they're all pretty much the same pace. Yeah, looks very interesting for sure. And as said, AlphaTauri, I mean, they've lost it a bit towards the end of the season. I mean, I would call it some kind of the Aston Martin syndrome, but yeah, let's hope they have a better end to the season, like the team in real life do as well. So yeah, I mean, Division Four certainly an interesting one, bar the top. Yeah, I think we now have a look at the penultimate division, which is Division Five, where I think we're gonna have to talk about this a bit longer than expected, because it was yourself starting in P18 who won the race by 15 seconds due to your sheer pace. El Squeak in second, and Andrew in third. He's done it again, another podium for the Flying Scotsman, with Becky Segeta in P4, Patrick, which is probably easier to pronounce, and Karen in P5, 10th Cannon in P6, Stone Shuffle in P7, with Kevin in P8, Milliarday in P9, and Pat Pader in P10 from Lexus, Cynthium, Echo, and J Street. In the Drivers' Championship, therefore, Andrew extends his championship lead as he is on 204 points, with Cynthium 185 and 10th Kenan 177. The second task driver gaining points on his teammate. Barbarino then on 170 and Milkan 169, with Friesen 161, Lexington on 159, and yourself on 120, sitting now P8 of the championship, with Ern on 116, level packing with Daza, or now called Dylan, also 116 points in P10 of the championship, just ahead of J Street, who's only 6 points behind. In the constructor standings of Division 5, Alfa Romeo also lead the way, and they've stretched their legs a bit after this win. They are now on 546 points, with Hassan 478, while Ferrari is on 424, and AlphaTauri on 374, jumping up 2 positions ahead of McLaren, who drop as they are on 350 points, and Red Bull also move up to 328 points, with Mercedes on 327, just 1 point behind. And then in the battle for P8 in Division 5, we've got Aston Martin 266, Williams on 253, and Alpine on 239. I mean, I think there's something to tell about you winning by 50 seconds from P18, is there? Because I think that happened a bit more than just pure driver skill, right?
No, it was all down to driver skill. I thought I
Oh well, let's move over
woke
to
up
Division 7 then.
woke up on the day. I thought I'm gonna start 18th and just gonna win. No. I didn't set a quali lap because I arrived late. Um, and it was raining. And the car, plan, race strategy, it wouldn't allow you to pick wet tires.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyway, was was all confused. The dry tires were faster than the wet tires at that point anyway, but most people had decided to pit onto the inters within them first 2 laps because we didn't know. So we've all pitted onto these inters, found out they're not as fast as the softs. Gone back onto the softs or mediums or hards or whatever it were. So we've all got this in our mind that the inters and wets aren't faster despite it seemingly looking like a wet track. It's raining, it's constantly raining, it's not
Yeah, it's
stopping.
one of those great features of the game, isn't it? Where it just decides, gonna put you on the dries, make it look like it's awful, and it actually feels awful, but it's just good
Yeah,
enough for the Inters.
No. So yeah, so that happens, and we had two or three safety cars throughout the race. Some people had taken a gamble to go back onto the Inters, um, and it not worked out again. And then, like I say, there was then a last safety car. At which point, on the lap before the safety car coming in, Mark comes over the radio and he goes, "Inters look like the faster tyre now." We've already received this message before, but I'm sat there and said to my dad, my dad came into my room and he goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm racing." He goes, "Where are you?" I'm like, "Seventh." It's raining, and I was like, "Yeah, it's not been a great race. Seventh is probably all I'm going to get." He goes, "Well, just pit for Inters then." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, we'll pit for Inters." Anyway, masterstroke from the man who has no idea what's going on. Pit for the Inters. The Inters were actually faster. Um, Took from seventh to first, probably within four corners. And then I was like, just in case there's any incidents that I had, someone trying to ticket me, I'm just gonna floor it, see how fast as I can go, make sure I get enough, second gap to make it. So if I do get a couple of penalties, which I eventually didn't get, you never know with a rainy track that you might have slightly nudged someone off track without realizing at some point.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
one of them was just running through my head. I was thinking, did I push him a bit wide there? Did I not? Anyway, ends up being a 15-second gap because the Inters were faster, like they said they were, and I think like Andrew once again has got to be the luckiest man of all time. Comes from absolutely nowhere in the safety cars. I hadn't seen him at any point in the race. I think he was below 10th most of the race.
It was
Also
outside the
decides to
top
pit.
10, though, with a few laps to go, actually.
Yeah, most of the race, just not nowhere to be seen. Don't know if that's from incidents or occurring or just getting annoyed, whatever. And then all I see is him end up finishing third, and I'm just thinking, how's he do it each week? Every single time there's a chance the game gives a lifeline, he takes advantage each time. And that's what we're saying with the Genta Bars thing, where if Andrew was in that division, he'd have won the race because he takes advantage of every single little small thing that goes wrong for each other driver. And
It's
he's,
ridiculous.
yeah,
Yeah. Scary, isn't it?
it is. I honestly think he's got EA servers in his room or something because each time it just goes the right way for him, and it's magical. I'm not jealous at all, but yeah, it was a great race for me. Felt a bit bad for those that stayed on the softs from the instead of going on to the inters, but I've had my fair share of losing a race I thought I should have won. So we'll take it as it comes along. And it was one of them where it set off a good period of racing for me, as that was the race that set off me to then win my next three league races. Not including the GRL races, but yeah, so it was good.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked at Andrew's POV there and just realized that he had an interesting strategy for that last safety car. Like, it was on mediums. He pitted for new mediums. The next lap he
Hmm.
pitted for softs, and the next lap he pitted for inters. So I think he was trying to get near the 8-stop strategy, um, which he couldn't manage in the end. But yeah, I mean, the Inter certainly was the right choice in the end. But yeah, once again, he gains a lot of places, and this time his rival was Cintium, and he's just got absolutely screwed with his choice of soft tires. I mean, the Inters are just so much quicker in the end, weren't they? Because Andrew started the last lap with a gap of 8.5 seconds to the car ahead in Patrick, and he just got him on the last corner. I mean, it's amazing how fast things can turn around, and apparently for Andrew, usually things turn around a bit quicker than for others.
it really does. I mean, yeah, I honestly think you should get a lottery ticket because the guy's luck is in all the time. Yeah, you can't complain about it. But you do also make your own luck. He's always in them positions.
Yeah, I
So
mean, based on his quality positions, it's not like he's going to lose that much by pitting once more, is he? I mean,
no, no, his quality is not it, but his race pace is on, and yeah, it mind boggles me. It really does. I could be a second faster than him in quali, and I still know he's going to be there in the race. He's going to be there or thereabout on the same pace as me, and I'm just like, yeah, maybe I'm a quality merchant at that point.
yeah, he's
So
one of those, isn't he? Who qualifies far down the order while you're up top, and then you're like, your whole race is going fine, and then on the last lap and the last straight, he's just pulling next to you and just waving because he's still he's like a shadow, isn't he? He's just always there, gonna
he is
disappear.
like a shadow.
But yeah, well, I mean, that means Andros extended his championship lead, and even though I think we both think that he's not the quickest driver in his division, someone has to certainly maybe go to Lord, pray a bit, and then maybe they get a bit of the luck as well, which could make it a very, very interesting championship for sure. But
Yeah,
I think for now we have a look at the bottom division, which is Division 7, where it was a win for Alpha Tauri because Quick Mick indeed was very quick because he won the race after penalties. Starting from P5, he picks up the race win with Mason Rott in P2 and Flasher in P3 after getting two 5-second time penalties for rear-ending Matthew, but also passing under safety car. With Benjo Warrior in fourth for Alfa Romeo as reserve, and Gas Buchanan in P5, with Matthew in P6 and Brown Spons in P7, but also retirements for Martinez, Monopole Monster, Sparky, Sion, Golden Wolf, Ace Guy, and Moss. In the Drivers' Championship, Theon, despite the DNFing, is clear at the top with 214 points and Flash on 186.5 in second, but Gaza Buchanan on 171.5 in third, just ahead of Stubbs in 170.5. We've got Mike Reed on 141 and Brown Spons on 137, while Moss is on 129 and Leo Hamilton on 124, just ahead of Quick Mick now on 104 points. So despite joining late, he's picked up loads of points already for Alpha Tauri. For Logan 93 and Ace Sky on 90, just ahead of Mason Rott and Sparky running out the top 13. That is. In the Constructors' Championship, McLaren still leads with 351 points now and Hassan 327.5, so they're still remaining close to them for now and keeping the pressure up, with Ferrari on 268.5 and Williams on 259, while Mercedes is on 234 and Alfa Romeo on 232. Alpine on 203.5, with Red Bull on 194.5, Alpha Tauri on 154.5, and Aston Martin on 72.5 points, rounding off the table as they've got a huge gap to claw back on AlphaTauri after their win. I mean, yeah, I mean, Quick Mick won this race, but someone who was pretty angry and annoyed after this race was Flasher. But yeah, just if you rear end someone by just not anticipating the speed and then also pass on the safety car, which I think we can both agree on is pretty unnecessary, especially if you fight for a championship. I mean, yeah, you just can't you shouldn't make these mistakes as a championship contender, right?
no, you really should not be making mistakes like that. Any mistakes under a safety car are all avoidable. And yeah, especially when you're fighting for a championship, every little mistake, just that when it isn't needed to be made, just don't make it. I mean, there's no except from going for an overtake in the actual race, there's no mistakes that really need to be made. So don't get
Especially
why
if your
people
rival
make.
has retired from the session. I mean, you surely want to take the biggest advantage out of it.
Yeah, when your championship rival retires and you've got a chance to make any single amount of points, you've got to make them.
But yeah, I mean that was he got fastest lap as well. But I said he wasn't very happy with Matthew. But in the end, he didn't do anything wrong. He just saw that Flasher made mistakes, and I'm sure he made Sion a favor with it as well, because that means the gap still is pretty solid for the Dutch driver. Yeah, but also quick Mick. I mean, said he's joined just over a month ago, and he's now over 100 points. Now just about scraping into the top 10 of the standings. I mean, especially if he keeps his form and his pace up. I mean, he might be someone who could be very interesting for next season, no? Because I mean, I said already over 100 points. AlphaTauri are going to be happy to have him.
Yeah, definitely they'll be happy to have him. I mean, 104 points is no mean feat. I mean, Sparky's been racing all season and only got 72.5. So, yeah. Also, Sparky wasn't happy with how he finished the race. Messaged me saying that he was annoyed about that with his DNF. But yeah, no, Quick Mix definitely been a good piece of work for the AlphaTauri to pick up. And yeah, they'll have enjoyed the 104 points that he's gained for them.
Yeah, and there's loads to gain still, because if you look up to Mike Reid, it's under 40 points. So with a sprint weekend coming up as well at Miami in a couple of weeks' time, I think he might tie up even higher than his current P9. I mean, also in the team standings, I think has suffered a bit with Flasher not winning the race, as it lost them 9 points in total, which would put them on 336, which would have made them 14.5 points behind only. But yeah, it's still looking quite good for McLaren. Looking better in the drivers, because in the constructors it was left two drivers fighting for it, and Mike Reid already proved that he can
No.
certainly win some races. But yeah, do you reckon Flasher will try to get his teammate involved in his own championship and may say, look, really need you ASAP to help me out, because otherwise we might slip back even further, and it would be good to at least grab one of the championships, and arguably the drivers' championship is the one that everyone wants.
Um, I would agree, but the only issue is he ruined his race himself. So if I'm his teammate, I'm sat there thinking, well, maybe if you'd have got them few points, then we'd be in a better predicament
Yeah.
than we are already for sure. So yeah, but to have two drivers in the top 10, that should really be a good founding and good foundation to win the team standings. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Reid probably, right, maybe he's going to say, like, look, I'm 30 points behind third, and, you know, if I've got a good couple of last few rounds, I might as well overtake you in the championship, because I said it's only 45 points, and with the enough of him, and I said, Mike Reid's got a couple of race wins. He is probably also in a good shout for at least P2. But yeah, before we wrap Div 7 off, I mean, even though there've been a couple of drivers who've done really, really well this season, I mean, you got to praise Skion though. I mean, he's certainly had a cracking season, and probably overall was the best driver over the whole season so far.
Yeah, no, he's Spion is a person that I know quite well. And he's had a very, very good season. Probably a little bit top heavy, isn't it? Really, this division to a certain degree, with the you know um like the difference between the top tier drivers and the lower tier drivers of this division. But
Yeah.
doesn't mean he was outright faster than the others. So yeah, he's done very well to prove himself, and he's like you say, he's been consistent. Like we've each time we've said when we've talked about the drivers' championship, it's that consistency that wins it for you.
Yeah, I said, and I think there is a difference. I think if you lead with a few points, there's certainly going to be loads of pressure on you. But if you have like around over a race win margin, I think you can really approach these races by knowing, I don't need to go all in every week, but I can
Yeah,
kind of manage it. I've got it under control because that usually gives you security. Because I said, if you have to go all in, you really have to go as close to the limit as possible, which also triggers some mistakes. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see and how he handles that pressure. But from what I've seen so far, I think he's going to do pretty well with it. But yeah, I think that's Division 7 pretty much wrapped up, and that's all our divisions actually sorted for today. So we now have a look at the overall Constructors' Championship right at the end of this video. I mean, Mercedes still lead the way with 2,048 points, so they finally topped the 2K points mark with Alfa Romeo on 1,762 and Red Bull on 1,590. Then we've got McLaren fourth on 1,541.5 and Ferrari on 1,492.5. Alpine then on 1,484.5 and AlphaTauri on 1,475.5. So they love the half of points there, with Haas on 1,451.5. Williams could stretch the gap a little bit, I believe. No, they actually lost a point to Aston Martin because Williams sit on 1,124 not 0.5, 1,124 points, and Aston Martin 1,105. Yeah, I mean, last week we said we agreed that Haas probably has the strongest team. I mean, they've not made the most of progress, at least this week, even though Corey had a good race. I mean, therefore Cintium struggled, and Cannon didn't have the best of races, but also a very solid one. But we agreed that McLaren have still had some good results, and this is proving here because they've gotten a bit of a gap to the guys behind, and now sitting in a fourth place, probably looking ahead to catch Red Bull, right? So McLaren are on the way up.
yeah, yeah. Like you say, it's still I still back the decision that we made with the Haas team, and Cincinnati won't have results as poor as that really. But like you say, it wasn't a normal race where it was based on his driving ability. Like I say, it was more of the track conditions that affected that. And yeah, the McLaren team, another another good showing in this time. It was what Division One, with the two people getting points compared to Division Two, last week. So yeah, they continue to have two drivers, at least in one division, pulling out some good points.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean Haas certainly. At least they can say they have nothing to lose now because they've got a massive gap to the guys behind. So yeah, it's pretty close still, and the said Haas probably has the lowest amount of pressure because they never had such a good season, even though they're currently sitting in P8. I mean, I know we've talked about it last week, but since Prix taken over Red Bull, they really seem to have switched, just momentum wise as well, but also mentally. I mean, they've now almost got a 100 points gap to P5 in Ferrari, and yeah, they're only around 160 points off you guys in Alfa Romeo. I mean, are those guys probably the biggest challenges for you in the last two races, or do you think it's just gonna switch back to McLaren and Ferrari just catching them back up, or how would you see this?
I think they might possibly break away from the McLaren team, but I don't personally. I wouldn't really say that our teams with any danger of being caught by them. So yeah, I think hopefully what will happen is we'll get 120 points each week, and they'll get 120, 115, and break away from the McLarens, and the McLarens get 100. You know what I mean? That kind of
Yeah,
thing is how I expect it to go. Really.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. As said, it depends on so many factors, on so many drivers, on who does well. As said, who's in the championship fight that might change a lot of things. But yeah, I mean, there's not too much to change this week. I think. I mean, McLaren have passed Ferrari. That's certainly something to change. But except that, everyone stayed in the same positions. Uh, yeah, I mean, not much to talk about because I said McLaren and Ferrari. They've always been switched. I mean, there was a time where Haas and Ferrari were third and fourth. Now Haas is eighth and Ferrari's P5. Also AlphaTauri and Alpine behind there. And now it's just Red Bull and McLaren. I've got the momentum a bit on their side. But yeah, I mean, from the other two in Williams and Aston, there's not much to expect anymore. I mean, they're obviously going to pick up a couple of points, but it's not going to be anywhere near enough to gain that gap back up to the teams ahead. But yeah, I mean, I think that's basically our podcast nicely wrapped up. Said the overall construct has not too many changes this week, but I think come the next 2 weeks we will definitely have a look on what changes there as we're now heading into the hot phase of the season where championships can and will be decided.
Yeah.
Next chance is next week, actually at Qatar, where Raven West can pick up his drivers' championship in Division 4, which would be the earliest championship win ever because the earliest has been Echo in season 3 with 3 rounds to go. And it's going to be the 5th last round. So, yeah, will be interesting. Maybe we'll look on that Division 4 stream, but also Division 1 because I think Qatar is going to have a massive DRS train to keep everyone close. But yeah, as I said, we're gonna head over to Losail in Qatar next week, a track that's not really designed for Formula One. It's actually made for MotoGP back in 2004, I believe. High speed circuit, barely slow speed corners. I think actually one corner that is classified as a slow speed corner. So I think all my fellow pad drivers are gonna have loads of track limit issues and lap invalidations, but I think also people on the wheel will at times struggle with the track limits, like
Yeah.
Sergio Perez did in real life, and Lando Norris in qualifying actually. So I think looking at that, McLaren might have a downfall quite shortly. But yeah, I mean, as said, we'll talk about the Qatar Grand Prix next week. But yeah, until then, we'll
All right.
see you in a bit when GRL returns.